hierarchy of all this is giving yourself enough food. Because if you are operating from restriction, if you're not giving yourself enough food and you're not eating in a balanced way, having enough protein, fat, fiber, rich carbohydrates, your brain is going to keep thinking about food all the time because you are not physically satisfied. You have not triggered the hormonal pathways for satiation. And so of course you're gonna have so much food noise. Your body's asking to be fed properly.
Today we're joined by Casey Weiss, a holistic nutritionist, life coach, and founder of Your Case for Wellness. Casey helps women break free from chronic dieting, balance hormones and blood sugar, and build a peaceful, confident relationship with food through simple, sustainable habits. She blends science with mindset and real-life practicalities, and she's here today to share her insights on holistic nutrition. Welcome, Casey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Looking forward to our conversation and learning a thing or two. I'm absolutely boggled by how our mind and how we perceive health. So it's really interesting. So, yes. So with that said, what is one of the most courageous things that you have done?
Yeah. So I struggled for so many years with food and with my body image. I didn't realize how much it was related to my actual mindset around food. And I kept doing research and studying, but it was all this energy and effort in the wrong areas. And honestly, one of the most courageous things I did was to realize and accept the fact that I didn't have the answers and paying for and investing in a holistic practitioner to help me because I had been suffering alone and in silence and not telling anyone. And to share that and to admit that and to accept help was very difficult for me. But not only did it obviously change my relationship with food, change my body, change my health for the better, but it also changed my entire career path, led me to go back to get my nutrition education and be able to launch my own business, which grew and grew and grew. So I am so grateful and thankful for that courage that it took. And I wish I had done it sooner.
It's interesting, isn't it? Absolutely. That we hide what the one thing we need to do. Like you needed the help, but you were suffering in silence, really. Absolutely. And it is by understanding, like you said, you've done all the training and you can understand now about your own body. So, Casey, your blend of nutrition science with mindset, with habit change. Tell me more about this.
Yeah. So when I was trying to figure things out on my own, I was initially really just focused on the diet piece. And I had been restricting for a long period of time. Eventually my body had had enough and I felt like my cravings were coming out of nowhere. I would overeat. I was gaining weight in a way that felt extremely uncomfortable. And so what I was thinking that was the solution was to continue to try to control food and eat less of it, exercise more. And this just led me to yo-yo. And in each process of yo-yoing with my weight going up and down, my set point kept getting higher and higher and higher. And let me be very clear, the goal of health isn't just about weight or weight loss, but my weight creeping up and up and up was an indicator of how I was treating myself, and it was unhealthy behaviors. So what ended up happening was with all this control of food, just got more obsessed and more stressed. But then I eventually heard about intuitive eating, and intuitive eating, negating the food rules, not labeling things as good or bad. This was helpful for me to have more food freedom, but it didn't help me at all with my nutrition. And so I wasn't feeling good either. Yes, I wasn't having as many restrictions on food, but I still wasn't where I wanted to be. And then that led me down to understand and research and eventually get coached in holistic nutrition, which obviously has many branches and many focuses. But that is what I now work on with clients because we need to understand the mindset and our relationship with food, but we also can't negate the nutrition foundation. Because if you don't have balanced hormones, you don't have balanced blood sugar, it doesn't matter that you've like made peace with food. You're still going to be craving the foods that are highly refined, high carbohydrate, which there's nothing wrong with having sugar and having carbs, but you don't want your whole diet to be that. And if you are not properly understanding how to fuel your body to feel its best, it's going to continue to crave those things, even if you've done all of the mindset work. And so, what's really missing in this space is how to be able to work on both the mindset in a non restrictive way, but also be able to understand nutrition. It's like this unsexy gray area in between that's not like dieting and extremes, but also isn't like just eat whatever you want. But it's what's most important for our overall health, our longevity, our well-being, and like feeling good in our present here and now bodies.
I can totally understand that because at the end of the day, we want to feel comfortable, we want to feel healthy, and blood sugar, hormones, especially for women, I mean, even men, but especially the hormones for women after going through menopause or anything like that, any transitional period can be really stressful. And then on top of whatever you're trying to eat, you're reaching out, the busy lifestyle. So, yeah, I can really understand why it's getting the whole process. And tell me more about it's. I know a lot of women have misconceptions about how they eat food or overeating and craving foods. Tell me more about that. What's going on there?
So, a lot of us are trying to control what we eat because we're trying to make our body look a certain way. We're trying to follow this or that.
Mm,
And what I find is most prevalent is that we are under eating, which then swings into the overeating. I call it like the pendulum swing. So, when you try to diet and you restrict so much, the more that you pull that pendulum in one direction, the more it's going to swing into the other. But we, quote, mess up with food. So we're like, I'm going to be better tomorrow. I'm going to do better. I'm going to eat only the good foods. And then as a result, not only is it physical restriction, it's also mental restriction. We get
mm,
tired of making these decisions day after day when all we're thinking about are the cookies and the ice cream that we have at home. And so we're trying to rely more and more on the willpower versus working with our science of our bodies and our biology to be able to also like work with the neuroscience as
mm,
well, working with our brain capacity. Again, it's really the fact that so much of diet culture is centered around controlling food, discipline, willpower versus how can we listen to our bodies? Because you were born with the innate
mm,
ability to understand your hunger and your fullness, but through dieting, through culture, through things your parents said, your friend said, your sister said, whatever it may be, has taught you that you should override those signals because of X, Y, or Z, because protein is the best thing that you need to be eating all the time now, or because this ingredient is bad, or because you should be smaller, or because you should be stronger, or whatever it may be. And because of that, we have lost touch with our body. But this can be relearned because it is within your body. It's just that it may take time. And a lot of us want that short, quick fix. And from personal experience, I know that I told myself, well, once I lose the weight, then I'll be normal with food.
yeah.
That's not how it works. You have to approach achieving your health goal the way you want to sustain it. And if you don't, then you're going to be constantly on that yo yo battle.
And it's so interesting, isn't it, that in the media and we all want to look a certain way. We see the way the models look or people in society. But here's the thing, you've got to do what's right for your body. And this is where I feel people, even men, we can't sustain, like you just said, trying to be a certain way because the body is craving food. It needs the nutrients. And maybe sometimes, it's okay to have these, like, whatever you want to label it as, whether it's good food, bad food, treats. It's just food. We give so much meaning sometimes to food, don't we? I mean, sometimes like we joke, and I do as well. I'm always thinking about food all the time, and your next meal and this and that, and oh, it's interesting, isn't it? How the mind overtakes. So interesting. And in society now, I mean, like you say, there's no such thing as good food's bad food. That's been taken on quite a lot, and especially
I
for
actually
youngsters.
would say, yeah, there is definitely no thing as good
Mm,
or bad food as
mm,
labeling, but food isn't equal either. And that's where I differ in terms of my
Mm.
methodology. I talk about, like I teach my inform intuitive approach because you are too smart to just say, oh, well, foods are equal because it's not true. That's BS. Like, obviously, there's certain foods that are health promoting, that are blood sugar stabilizing, that can make you feel better. So you deserve the knowledge to understand what foods, what combinations can make you feel your best, but also understand how to not have the guilt and shame associated with if you eat those foods that aren't as good for you. Because guess what? When you have that guilt and shame associated with eating those foods, you eat them, you feel like crap because you've labeled it as a bad food. So you literally have bad food swirling around inside of you. And what happens then when you feel bad because you ate bad food? You're likely to eat more of that quote bad food to emotionally cope. And we can see how that can really become a spiral into more negative eating behaviors. And then followed by oh, I was so bad this weekend. I need to be good this week. And all of the restriction, again, whether it's mental, physical, or a combination of the both, that we put upon ourselves, which then leads us again down the cycle over and over and further stressing out our bodies, further making it harder for us to sustain, to be consistent, to honestly just like enjoy our lives.
And the key thing is there, enjoying your life. Absolutely. Yes. You help women break free from yo-yo dieting because let's face it, so many women do. I mean, we want to, we've got a event or something somebody wants to go to, you try and lose a few pounds to get into the dress or the outfit you want to, and it's up and down. So yeah, tell me more about that. How does that work?
So when we're so short-term minded, our goals are going to be short-term. I mean, the sustaining of those, quote goals. Like you said, if it's a certain event. And also like I very much most of the women that I work with do want to lose weight, but they recognize that health is most important. And so we focus on health and then the
Mm.
weight loss can come. But when we're so hyper focused on weight loss, just think about how whenever you have made something like top of mind and you're stressing so much about it so much harder versus how much easier it was to accomplish certain goals in your life when they were important to you, but they weren't something you were putting so much stress and pressure on. And I like to give this analogy of when you tell a kid that in a room full of toys, they can literally play with any toy, but not this one toy. All they want to play with is that one toy that you told them that they can't play with, even though there's a million other things. And that's when we're putting so much pressure on whether it's one goal or not eating one type of food or doing things a certain way. We are actually making our brains hyper fixate on that and all of the lack and scarcity associated with that. So we need to work with our brain and orient things differently. And that's where the mindset piece, as well as the education of nutrition piece, comes in hand. And there is nothing wrong with an event coming up and therefore, being more intentional, maybe doing a little bit more meal prep, maybe more eating a little bit more at home, maybe making sure you actually get the whatever amount of step goal you want a day, as long as it's nothing crazy, right? But we really need to focus on, again, like the sustainable habits, because you can maybe look good in that dress at that one event, but is it worth it if you're going to feel bad about yourself for the rest of the year because you can't sustain that because you put all of your effort and energy towards looking a certain way for X event, that then you, again, it's going back to that pendulum swing that you swing in the other direction. Like I'd rather you feel really good 365 days of the year than feel like, oh my God, I have the ideal body for the 5 days of those five events that you are, being crazy to yourself for. And I believe that's what most
Wow.
people want to feel as well if we're rationally thinking about the situation.
For sure. Yes. Yeah. It's like a minefield, really. But if we, I think, come back to ourselves, like you're saying, understanding, having the knowledge about it, that's really interesting. Yes, definitely. It's understanding, and sometimes, just understanding the way our own body works. Certain foods will be better for it, and certain foods aren't going to agree with your body.
Hmm.
Yeah, you talk a lot about food noise. What actually creates food noise in the brain, and how can women quit it?
So the food noise is generated by the shoulds, the shouldn'ts, the
Mm.
restrictions, the rules that we put on ourselves. And so this for me was something that was very hard to do on my own to be able to remove that. And some of us can. But the first part is really noticing when it comes up. Noticing when you're saying, I shouldn't, I should, you're putting some rule, no carbs after this time. I need to drink X amount of gallons of water. Like, again, it doesn't mean that it's all with bad intentions. A lot of it is coming from a place of wanting to be better. But the
Mhm.
acknowledgement of the rules is the first thing when it comes to actual brain science for us to be able to make change and create different habits. So the food noise comes from, again, these rules, these restrictions. So, first of all, acknowledging them and then giving ourselves permission. The biggest thing is giving ourselves permission to eat the real breakfast, permission to have the dessert, and being able to recognize where you were once operating from this place of, I can't. And again, it may be uncomfortable. Maybe for a period of time, you feel like, wow, I am not having this control around food. But the more that you allow yourself, not like just, okay, I'm going to put everything in my house. I'm going to buy every trigger food and put it in my house and eat it all. That's not going to be good either because that's going to be overstimulating to your system and is actually not going to be
Mhm.
productive in being able to feel a more normal relationship around food. But you know what? Maybe I always say, like, I can't have dessert during the week. Maybe I do go out for the ice cream in midweek so that it's not in my house. I find this is a really great way to start to ease into it, like going for things or having some more treats outside of the house, because sometimes having in the house can be really triggering, at least to start. Or maybe it's inside, you get like the, single magnum bar of an ice cream bar or something that you put in at home, so that it's one thing that you can have. And yeah, you may in your brain be thinking about that bar in your freezer all the time, but recognizing that's happening and being able to orient differently is helping to rewire the neural circuitry. And so whenever with clients, we work on like a step process, but depending on them, what their triggers are, what their emotional needs are with food, we figure out how to lessen and dampen that noise. But what I will say is, at the hierarchy of all this is giving yourself enough food. Because if you are operating from restriction, if you're not giving yourself enough food and you're not eating in a balanced way, having enough protein, fat, fiber, rich carbohydrates, your brain is going to keep thinking about food all the time because you are not physically satisfied. You have not triggered the hormonal pathways for satiation. And so, of course, you're going to have so much food noise. Your body's asking to be fed properly.
And isn't that just the key? When we eat healthy, we eat so much more food. And actually, naturally, we could look good, lose weight, because we're actually feeding our body properly. Instead of having this one ice cream, like you said, or something that isn't going to do us any good. It'll give us a quick hit of what, you know, and then that's all in the mind as well. So, it's so
Well, the thing
interesting.
is that the ice cream can be good. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be a bad thing.
Mm.
I enjoy desserts, but it's realizing what you're eating it for, because you're not eating it for nutrition or satiation. You're eating it because you want to enjoy it. Maybe it's emotional reason. Emotional eating doesn't have to be bad. But what's important is we recognize when we're emotionally eating, because if we're eating out of emotion, we know that eating more of it, like eating 5 of those bars, is not going to help us emotionally feel any better. We're just using it as
Mm.
a short term band aid. And that's okay from time to time. But then recognizing it as, okay, and literally labeling, I'm emotionally eating. Okay, I will do this to myself. I'm emotionally eating. So I'll sit down, I'll portion out, not like I'm using measuring cups, but like I'll put it like on a plate or in a bowl or whatever it is, and I allow myself to enjoy it. And because I'm not feeling guilt or shame because of it, I can actually enjoy it. Because again, that goes back to the guilt shame. Oh, I shouldn't have eaten that. That the magnet has no nutrition. Yeah, that's true. But if I can be able to sit and enjoy it, then I can actually be, more satisfied by it emotionally from what I was looking for, and then be able to move on and not make it a repeatable pattern that keeps me stuck.
And I think there is a case of just being totally honest with yourself as well and
Hmm.
owning it for the reason why are you doing it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's
So,
again, it's all this like with this guilt and shame. I know so many of my behaviors, I would eat in secret, do things because I didn't want other people to see me that way. I also like
mm,
didn't want to see myself that way. And if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of times that we eat like the bad food, we're not eating and just sitting enjoying them. We're eating them and watching TV and playing on our phone or whatever. I swear, if we all just if you told yourself, I can eat whatever I want to eat, I have no restrictions, but the only caveat is that I need to be fully present when I'm eating, no distractions. no one would be overeating, or like very little instances of overeating, because we're so distracted. We're constantly looking for dopamine hits. Like you're eating,
Mm.
you're playing on the phone, you're watching whatever. It's like firing, firing, firing. We are in dopamine overload, which is also why we gravitate towards the dopamine hitting foods, sugars and carbs, which again, we can eat. There's nothing wrong with that. However, we need to kind of dull our dopamine, honestly, like do a dopamine detox in some ways. And when we can be more present with our food, we can be able to sense when we've had enough and our fullness way, way better.
Yes, that's so interesting. Yeah, and it's true. So many women do think they have a willpower problem. And how do you
Absolutely. Yep.
reframe this with your clients?
The willpower again comes from this old dieting narrative and mentality approaching food, weight loss, etc. So it's really about building routines and structure to support you, because the willpower narrative makes you constantly stuck in this fight mechanism with food. I have to just more willpower, whatever. It's like, no, how can we work with your life versus what some influencer online who has like no other obligations can just like be home, prep all the things, can go to Pilates 5 times a day, whatever it is. Like, that's not what we're here for. We need to work with you, your lifestyle, and your goals to be realistic. And
Hmm.
how can we make it easier for yourself? Because, yeah, you're right. If you have a house full of candy and you have no healthy food prepped, of course you're going to eat the candy. Like, this isn't a willpower problem. This is again your biology and just like what the natural order of things. So, we need to work with, okay, what is realistic for you to prep? What time do you have to prep? How can we put reminders in the day so that you do, or not in the day, but I really very much encourage clients to have a set reminder of literally 15 minutes the end of the week to look ahead for the next week for what
Hmm.
their schedule is, when they could plan in maybe certain workouts, meal prepping. We either do batch prep, or some of my clients like cook each night because they genuinely want to do that. But it's like being honest with yourself of what you have the time to do. And then also, even within that plan, oh, maybe your plan is to go out to eat. Great, but can we pick ahead a time, a place to go out to eat that you know that there's an option that is going to be supportive of your goals and your needs, right? Um, and then again, like the willpower thing, going back to, I'm sounding a little bit like a broken record here, but if you aren't giving your body enough and of the proper fuel, it's going to
Hmm.
feel like willpower because your body's going to keep wanting more and more. There's actually very much science that even if you give your body the quote enough calories, your body will want more if you're not giving it proper nutrients, because it's literally asking to eat more so that it can get those nutrients, but yet you're not giving it the nutrients it needs. So, by understanding proper macro and micronutrient needs, you will be able to eat less and be satisfied and not have
Hmm.
to rely on the white knuckling willpower that is the common narrative in diet culture.
There's so many diets out there at the moment, so many fads as well.
Yeah.
Like, cut out this, cut out that, follow that.
Hmm.
It's really interesting to, i- it's a minefield out there, but I
Hmm.
think you need to come back to who you are and how, what's good for you, and coming with whole food again. Exactly what
Absolutely.
you're saying. Yeah. So, what are the most common nutrition mistakes you see women make when trying to eat healthier?
Definitely not eating enough or early enough. I recommend that we
Mm.
all, especially as women, men can much more experiment with intermittent fasting. Postmenopausal women can experience with intermittent fasting as well. I do not recommend, if unless you are again like postmenopausal as a woman. That is because our cortisol is naturally highest in the morning. That is a good thing. That helps us to get out of bed. It helps with alertness. It helps with focus. But by then not eating and giving ourselves that sustained period of not eating and nourishment, when we've already not eaten overnight, we are then relying on stress hormones. And that's why we'll be like, because I intermittent fasted for years. I was like, I'm not hungry. But you're running on stress hormones, not actual fuel, which is not helpful for your sleep later on. It's not helpful for your hormones, which is not surprising then why I didn't have a period, even when I was gaining more and more weight. Um, and then What ends up happening is that later in the day, finally your body catches up and you're like, well, I don't eat, but then, you overeat later. If you're really honest with yourself, you're
Yeah.
overeating later. And so when you're overeating later and then like probably closer to bed, when you're not even utilizing the food as efficiently, because most of us are least active in the night hours, which is also a good thing because that's how our hormonal rhythms are set up. As circadian beings, we're supposed to not
Mm.
be having and or expending as much energy at night. And that's why our melatonin production goes up, etc. But that's also why we should be making sure to fuel ourselves enough earlier in the day. And how we eat our first meal really sets the tone in terms of our cravings for the rest of the day. So making sure now, maybe some people will start eating breakfast, but they'll eat something like, a bagel on the go or a croissant and a coffee. So we're getting just carbohydrates and caffeine, which is actually only going to further exacerbate that stress response
Mm.
and that increased level of cortisol. So there, to some people, like some online will like overblow cortisol. I mean, cortisol is a good thing, but just it's extended periods of elevated cortisol that are not ideal
Mm.
for us, for our hormones, for our body, and for our cravings, most especially. So having enough, making sure that we also with having breakfast have, a great protein source. I'm not a fan of counting grams of protein. However, I will say that being
Mhm.
protein aware is really helpful, especially since people are like, oh, I had an egg, I had 2 eggs. 2 eggs is like 12 grams of protein. We really want bare minimum to be getting 20 grams of protein for our first breakfast, for our first meal of the day. So we want some protein. We want healthy fats. We could do avocado. Yolks in the eggs have healthy fats. If it's a certain yogurt, whether it's dairy or non-dairy, cheese, nuts, seeds, olive oil, so many beautifully healthy, delicious sources of fats. We want fiber-rich carbs, whether that's coming from, something like we have whole grain toast or beans or grains, and fiber in general
Mm.
from or all of the different plant foods that we can get, which obviously includes those beans and those grains, along with things like berries and vegetables, spinach, mushrooms, all of like the delicious things of life. So, what I find is again that it's like not eating in the morning, and then not eating enough in the morning, and the next thing is being so obsessed with what I'm actually, this is a newer one. Now, as I said, we've gotten to the place where we now, so like, when I started my practice, women weren't thinking about protein. Now, people are like thinking about protein so much to the point where they're like so focused on grams of protein that they're eating multiple scoops of protein powder a day, protein bars, all of these things, like not quality or ingredients.
Mm.
Whereas, and again, like I have protein bars once in a while, and it's like fun to, if you enjoy it, like having whatever the protein treat or the waffles with some added protein, cool. But I would much rather you have less protein and focus on overall other macro and micronutrients, especially fiber. We are way under eating fiber now.
Mm.
That is much more important to me. That's from like a specifically food perspective. When it comes to nutrition mistakes. Now, I know we kind of already touched upon some of these mindset things as well, which are equally, if not more important. But I know we love when we have a holistic nutritionist here. We want to be talking about some specifics when it comes to nutrition and what we're actually consuming. And I would start with those.
That's amazing. Really is. And I think it is about understanding it as well. And like you said, the cortisol in
Absolutely.
the morning, like some people don't even think of that.
Hmm.
It's like educating yourself again
Hmm.
and what your needs are, your work
Absolutely.
patterns, and seeing what works for you. Yes. So, how this is a very big one. How does blood sugar impact energy, cravings, moods, hormones, and the list goes on? And what are a few simple ways to balance it?
Yeah. So when our blood sugar is elevated. Now, we do need to have changes in our blood sugar, or your blood sugar should rise and fall, but we want to be able for it to, again, it to fall and not to have these intense peaks, because that's when we have these intense peaks and then we crash.
Mm.
Versus, okay, it could be a little elevated, but then it's more of a valley, so to speak. Because otherwise it's going to stress our bodies out physically and mentally. And as a result, we are going to have more intense cravings, going to, as you said yourself, it's going to impact our focus. It's going to impact our energy. It's going to impact our mood. So it really goes back to the foundations of making sure that we, first of all, do not have naked carbohydrates. I say take those naked carbs and wrap them up in a blanket. So instead of having just white rice on its own, can we add some salmon for protein and fat, maybe avocado for more fat and fiber, and even just that alone, some cucumber for fiber. Like even that alone is like going to add a little blanket around it. And this goes though for your snacks too. And I find that people with snacks, that's when they are least likely, and especially like they're grazing. Oh, I just had a cute few, chips there. I had a little whatever, and not thinking about any of the pairing. I will say for blood sugar, I really want to focus on balanced meals. A lot of going to another nutrition mistake. Most women are under eating their meals and overeating on snacks. So they're like,
Mhm.
well, I barely eat because I don't eat a lot because they are really having these like ridiculously low calorie snacks, meals, and which is that it's not enough for them. It shouldn't be enough for them. And so then they are then snacking, grazing, like kind of not thinking about the other things, the bits and bobs, which really do add up. And you're not even being satisfied or really enjoying them. And they're these constant hits of food. And even if they're, quote, healthy food, no matter what, even if it's healthy food, it's going to spike your blood sugar a little bit. And so if you're having constant spikes throughout the day, that is not going to be beneficial for your short term, how you feel, for your short term health, or your long term health either.
Definitely, because like it's such an important way of how we feel.
Hmm.
You know, obesity and things like that. The blood sugars play a big part in that.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So you are the host of OK, but What Should I Eat podcast. Tell me more about that. I love the name.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. I came up with a name because a lot of the women that I work with in my audience are honestly in flux with information about food. And they've just kind of gotten to a point like, okay, what should I eat? But like, okay, so I get that I've heard about blood sugar foods, but like, what should I eat? Right. So I started my podcast a few months ago. I've my audience on Instagram and other platforms. But for me, I love to chat. I've loved being a guest on other podcasts. And so to be able to provide more long form content for my audience members and people just interested in realistic, holistic nutrition
Mhm.
without the BS, I'm like, not want to sugarcoat. I'm here to hold your hand and support you, but also tell you like what you got to improve so that you can have a better, happier, healthier life. And so my podcast is all about, actionable steps, breaking down the science, breaking down the mindset, all of that and more. So would love for you listeners here to go and check it out as well. It's on Spotify. It's just right now. In the future, I'll expand to other platforms, but to start out, we're just on Spotify.
That's brilliant. And the links will be in the show notes. So listeners, please do check it out.
Great.
So what is the most important lesson you've learned over your life so far, Casey?
Oh wow. I would say you don't need to do it all alone. And it's obviously we started out with this, so I feel like it's a great tie-in. But I relearned this even harder when I had my son 2 years ago,
Mhm.
and trying to do it all on my own. And even recently, I had been doing all this on my own with business, and I just invested yesterday in a new business coach because I want to be able to expand my business even more and help more women or people around the world.
Mm.
And whenever I look back when I just did on my own now, there's so much to be sad for, like your grit and determination and working hard. We're not negating
Mhm.
that, but then also realizing what you deserve, and you deserve to have support. You deserve to not put all the weight of it on your own shoulders. And so that's something that I have to realize. I have to continuously remind myself throughout my life and the various circumstances that I find myself in.
That's amazing and well done.
Thank you.
Yeah. If there was one key takeaway you want every listener to walk away with today, what would that be?
Yeah. So I would be that if you are struggling with health, with your body, with your weight, we need to take a step back and not just focus on the food, because you can learn literally every nutrition fact. You could be a encyclopedia with health and nutrition, but if you don't understand your triggers, like why you're overeating, why you turn to food, why emotionally you are in, XYZ place that makes you then want to have XYZ food, you will never be able to make change. And again, that was me as someone who was reading all of the diet books back when there was like all about like the Women's Health magazine. And I was taking all the, I mean, I know it still exists, but now we have a lot easier forms of content to be able to absorb information.
Mm.
But I was so focused on the food that I was negating the most important part and the foundation, the root cause of why I was overeating in the first place. So I would really encourage you to take a step back as reflection, not judgment. And then therefore take steps accordingly. Get help if it's so, get support, get accountability. Maybe it's a partner, maybe it's a friend, whatever it may be, because you don't deserve to struggle. You don't deserve to be stuck in this way with food and thinking about food all the time and stressing about food all the time and worrying about food all the time in your body and what you're going to do, what you're going to eat. It's exhausting, and your life was made for so much more.
That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. So where can the listener find you online, your podcast? What's your website, Casey?
Absolutely. So I am your case for wellness, like your Casey, but your case for wellness. You can find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. I, though, am also on TikTok. You can, if you go to my Instagram or in the show notes, you'll see a link where you can sign up for my email list where I'm always giving information and free resources. And also my podcast, as I said, it's on Spotify. But again, if you go to my links on my Instagram, it's all there. All the links, the free resources, you can all find it there.
That's brilliant. And the links will be in the show notes. So please, listeners, do connect. So thank
Absolutely.
you for sharing your insightful wisdom and knowledge with us today. And by doing so, you have helped so many others make a difference. I'd really like to acknowledge you, Casey Weiss.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. And we are all about Create the Courage to Be Fearless podcast here. What is your definition of courage?
Ooh, I guess to feel the fear but do it anyway, which is probably pretty cliche, but it really is. It really is true. And I was honestly journaling about that just the other day, as like right before I decided to make that investment in my business. And it's, the courage isn't just blindly following certain things or just being able to be the one to jump off the cliff. It's actually being able to recognize why it's hard and still try to put your best forward.